When you have your girls, you're never alone. You get together for coffee, maybe to work out, or just to laugh. We created Hey Girl just for you. Can't wait for you to join us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Hey Girl. I'm your girl Kim with an E, and this is episode 82. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, I want to let you know that Hey Girl is a safe space where you can share your experiences and be affirmed. Let's face it, life can be complex and sometimes overwhelming. That's why we believe in the power of conversation, because knowing you're not alone is what helps you get through. And I'm so glad that you are here with us today. Come on in, say hello in the comments, tell us that you're here, and welcome. I hope that you will like, follow, and share today's live. I hope you will like and follow the Hey Girl page. And I hope that you will tell everyone you know to join us every week. We are having affirming conversations, particularly this month, as we kick off, or last week, I should say, we kicked off a brand new theme. And, it's an interesting theme, right? It's about failure. And often on this show, especially, we focus more on success and the successes of women who are doing amazing things. And I absolutely want to continue with that focus. But I think that sometimes we want to hide and sweep under the rug the failures that we have to first overcome in order to have those successes. And so our focus this month is actually on failure instead of success. Well, I shouldn't say instead of success, in relation to success. And I want to have some real conversation about the failures that we all have experienced in one way or another. Now, of course, I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I don't want you all to put your stuff out there if you're not comfortable doing it. But I want us to recognize that it's important for us to be transparent and really own the things that we maybe have not always done right, because it also is a way to motivate others that in spite of our failings and our mistakes, we can still succeed. And often revealing what we have not always done right or done well lets others know that they're not alone. And that's one of the main ways that we can stay stuck and stay failing, is when we feel like we have to manage everything by ourselves and we have to figure it out all by ourselves. So that's what this month's theme is all about. That's what today's conversation is all about. And I hope that you are here for it. So here's what I want to know. I always have a question for you all in the comments to share. What have you learned from your mistakes? I know we've all made mistakes in one way or another, and whether you want to share what that mistake was or what those mistakes have been is up to you. But what lessons have you learned from the mistakes in your past? That's what I'd love for you to share with us in the comments. Now, I will be sharing a little more next week on our show. It will be just Kim, so I hope you will tune in. And I have some things to share about the mistakes that I have made and the lessons that I have learned from those mistakes. But I'll tell you one thing that I have absolutely learned is that I cannot get through the challenges that I face alone. And that's a huge lesson to learn, because as I said before, when you feel like you have to do it alone, go it alone, and keep all of your stuff to yourself, you actually continue to fail and not move forward. And that's one of the lessons that I have learned, that I don't have to go it alone, which is also one of the reasons why I started Hey Girl, because I want you guys who are tuning in every week to know that there are others out there that you can relate to, that you can look up to, that you can be motivated by, because they are in similar situations as you are. And along the lines of that idea of not being alone, I want to share with you something I've shared before, but I don't know how many of you have Spotify accounts. You can get one for free. I don't know how you listen to music typically as you go throughout your day, but I particularly enjoy listening to Spotify, and I have a special playlist that I've actually curated. And the title of it is Youre Not Alone. And I want to tell you, you should definitely check out this playlist. Even if you haven't used Spotify before, it's very simple to go in and create a free account. And I have, as I said, curated some songs specifically with the theme of of You're Not Alone, and specifically for the purpose of motivating you and me to keep going through whatever challenges we may face. So definitely check that out. I will put the link in the chat so that you can get to it. And I hope that it is a blessing to you. Who is with me today? I don't know if any of you out there have shared in the comments yet. Let me check and see. Say hello to me. Hey, Yolanda. Good to see you. Hey, Lisa girl. What's up? So, you guys answer the question. What lessons have you learned from your mistakes? Do tell, do tell. And the link to the Spotify playlist is there. So, definitely check that out. Save that to your playlist. And also want to remind you to sign up for the Just Kim newsletter if you haven't already. That's a weekly motivation to your inbox that I send, again, just to connect and just to remind you that you're awesome and you got this. And of course, the November calendar is what I send. Well, each month I'll send a calendar for your desktop. I sent one a couple weeks ago for the November calendar. It's super cute. If you haven't gotten one yet, just send me a message and I'll get that to you. And I usually try to have some kind of free download for you. I send out little image quotes and backgrounds for your cell phone, just whatever I can come up with that I think will be enjoyable for you. So definitely check that out. Sign up if you haven't already. And I hope that you enjoy that. Like I said, share it with a friend as well. And hey, Eb. Thank you. So glad to hear. Uh, Yolanda, you said the lessons that I have learned is life what it is. What are you saying is what it is? Yeah. Lisa says there are so many. I know, I know. Pick one, right? Exactly. All right, cool. So I am so excited to have my guest for today. This is also the reason why, one of the reasons why I do Hey Girl, and one of the reasons that I've been motivated to do a lot of the things that I do. It's because of my sister circle. And my guest today is a member of that sister circle, and she has been such a blessing in my life. And I'm telling you, there's nothing better than a group of like-minded friends who you can surround yourself with, who will motivate you to do your best, will encourage you that you're doing okay, that you got this, that you can do this. And I'm just so excited that she's here today. So I have a producer named Amanda, and I have a very good friend, Amanda. So sometimes I get them confused when I'm calling their name. But today, my guest is Amanda Gatewood, and she is married to the love of her life, Wayne. And she is the mother of three beautiful children, who I claim as my own, by the way. Amanda has a PhD in public administration and has been a college professor for the last 7 years. She loves teaching and learning, but her real passion is helping people curate the life they want. She has recently become a licensed realtor in the Columbus, Ohio metro area and sees her work as a realtor as part of her lifelong work to narrow racial and wealth gaps through home ownership. To be sure, Amanda's journey has had its ups and downs, but she's here to share with us how she manages to stay in the fight. Please help me welcome my sister friend, Amanda Gatewood. Hey, girl.
Hey, girl.
What's up? How are you?
I am doing well. I am just so excited to be on the show because the last time I was on the show, girl, totally
Yes.
different situation.
I know. And it's funny, each time I've had you on, it's been to talk about the trials and tribulations, right?
Yes,
I don't know why
absolutely.
that is. But yes, I'm so glad to have you back. And a lot has actually happened. And it's only been a year. Doesn't it feel like it was like 5 years ago?
It does. It does. The well, we're still in the middle of it. The pandemic timeline is just totally different than the world before
Truly.
that. It's moving fast and dragging at the same time. So, yeah.
It truly is. It's so weird. It's so weird. It's like ever since COVID, nothing has really been the same, honestly.
Absolutely.
So. Yeah, yeah. Well, welcome back, and you're looking gorgeous as always.
I dressed up for you. So
Oh, thank you. So of course I know you and know all about your background, but I wish you would for a moment just share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, a little bit about your
okay.
family, to let
Yeah.
everyone know as we get started.
All right. So as you stated, I am a 37-year-old mother of three. I am married to a retired military. Shout out to the Air Force that gives us free health care for the rest of our lives. So I am forever indebted to them. I am the daughter of a pastor, so I grew up in church. I'm the youngest of five children. There's a huge age gap between me and my siblings, and that kind of plays into kind of my life story. My siblings are 7, 10, 15, and 16 years older than me.
Mm,
And let's see. So, like you mentioned before, for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been living my dream. I was a college professor, teaching, and everything was just going well. And then I fell in love. My husband got orders. We moved across country for 2 years. So I, left that job, and then we moved back, and just in the middle of motherhood, mothering two kids who are 15 months apart, and who
yeah.
are tearing up my house, and just trying to keep my head above water and just
Mhm.
kind of rolling with the punches that life gives us.
Yeah, for sure. So when you think about your younger years, your growing up years prior
Mhm.
to husband, kids, all that, when you imagined your
Yeah.
future life
Oh.
and your future self, what did you imagine your life to be?
So it is actually quite hilarious. So I wanted to be the wife of a full-time pastor named Elder Ryan. I have no idea who this man is, where that name came from. But I was, again, being the daughter of a pastor, I wanted to be married to a full-time pastor. I wanted to stay at home with the kids. So that was my dream up until probably like the third or fourth grade. And then I got in
Okay.
school and I started excelling and just doing wonderfully. And I just said, you know what?
Mm,
I want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be Claire Huxtable. That was my
mm,
dream. If anyone asked me, I was going to a HBCU, I was going to graduate, and then I was going to go to law school, become a lawyer, maybe a senator, and just like change the world. And maybe kind of getting into what the topic of this series is, it wasn't until like my senior year of college that I kind of had in my guess one of my first major failures. I
mm,
just chickened out. I couldn't take the LSAT. Like I just absolutely just started panicking. Just the thought of it, I just couldn't do it. And so I
mm,
didn't take the LSAT. Clearly, I'm not a lawyer now, and I just didn't do that. And I often kind of wonder like what my life would look like had I done what I dreamed my whole life to do. I think I
yeah.
have a beautiful life, and we'll talk more about that. And I think I've had a
Mhm,
wonderful career and still am having a good career. But that was
yeah.
one of my, first major disappointments in myself
Mhm,
that I just
mhm.
couldn't pull it together and do it. So yeah.
Which is so surprising to me because I know you. You are
Yeah.
smart. You kill it all the
Yeah.
time. So to think that
Yeah.
you would feel like you couldn't handle the LSAT, just that blows me away.
You know what it is? And so, like, part of being the youngest child is that you look up to your siblings and you kind of see what their mistakes are. And so, I had kind of drafted this narrative or this position of myself as being the golden child, the child who never did anything wrong. I had never failed a test, I'd never gotten a C. I could
Mm,
count the number of B's that I ever had. And so, I think for me, not that I think, I know I was afraid of taking it, and this would be the one time, like, they say the emperor
mm,
has no clothes, like all of that
yeah.
facade would be exposed, like, oh, she only got a 4.0 because she went to a HBCU, or oh, she only
Wow.
got this 3.9 because she went to an all black high school, or oh, she only
Mm,
got this because of that. It would have been like the first time that like all of that would have been like, oh, maybe she isn't
mm,
as bright. And
mm,
so I was so afraid of that, and we all know
yeah.
that if I had taken it and didn't get the score that I want, I could have taken it again, studied. But
Right.
in my mind, it was like this was the first time that I could have that potential failure and it be so
Yeah.
public, you know, in
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah. So it was just easier to not even take a chance, basically.
I didn't even do it. I took the
Yeah.
GRE instead. So it's not like I didn't take a test. I just took the
Right.
GRE. So yeah.
Right. Right. Which we all have to do if we're going to grad
Yeah,
school. Um,
exactly.
so, hello to Michael Haywood. Good evening to you. And Lisa says, I learned that failure doesn't define me. Process, readjust, and move on.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's good. Um, so you didn't do law school. Instead,
No.
what did you do?
I ended up, so I did and also part of me did not want to go to school for 3 years longer, which is funny if you listen to my career journey that I'm about to tell you now. I ended up going to school
Right.
for 5 more years. So I ended up getting, so taking the GRE, then I went to University of Florida, got my master's in urban and regional planning. I knew absolutely from day one of the graduate program that this was not a career that I was going to do long term. But I
Mm,
was a person, if I started it, I was going to finish it. I felt like there was
mm,
no harm. You know, it was fully funded. So it was like, you
mhm,
know, any degree is still good, right? You know, so
mhm,
I went on and got my master's, and then I ended up working for about 2.5, almost 3 years as like an urban planner. And then I, you know, was getting married. I knew that I needed to move. I hated that
mhm.
job. So I shouldn't say I hated that job. It wasn't the right fit.
Okay.
And so I quit the job, got married. I quit the job, started a PhD program, and then got married a week after the PhD program started.
Mm,
Because what I knew for certain at that season of my life was that I loved school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that
mhm.
I wanted to learn and like be around that. And so I was able to get funding for that. So I went on and did the PhD program, and you know, I'll tell you more about
Yeah.
that in a bit. So yeah.
Yeah. We'll dig into that a little more. So it's interesting that you took the path that you did for your academic life and kind of trying to figure that out. And I think it's interesting or I think it's important rather to say that sometimes we don't have it all figured out, and we don't necessarily have to. It's through doing that we
Yeah.
learn and figure out what it is that we like or don't like or want to do for the long term. And so that's okay. Some might see that as failure, but no, actually, some of that is the figuring it out part.
Yes.
So that was your professional life. And then you mentioned that you got married. So
All right.
let's talk a
Oof,
little
that
bit
was a
about let's talk a little bit about that.
yes.
This was not Wayne Gatewood. This was
No,
someone else. And
this was not
and
Gatewood, no.
And so, yeah. And so, speaking of lessons learned, that
Mhm.
was a learning opportunity, that was a
It
learning
was.
experience. So
Yes.
you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
at the time, had, at all of my life had kind of gone in a particular order. You know, you go to seventh grade, you go to eighth. So I always knew that going to college and getting my degree, that was what I was going to do. My mom had preached that into me. And then another thing that society, and maybe, myself too, internally in my religion, was this idea that a woman or a person wasn't fully successful or fully evolved until they have become coupled or attached with someone, right? Being
Mhm,
married and starting a family. I knew that I wanted to be a mother since the day I could remember. And so I had been
mhm,
dating a guy for about 3.5 years at that point. And I was, it just
mhm,
seemed like the logical next step, even though
mhm,
both of us knew that it was not, we really weren't compatible, or that the love really wasn't there. I so we got married. A week, like I said, a week after the PhD program started.
mhm,
So
mhm,
he had a new wife who had quit her job and who was
mhm,
going a full-time PhD student. So he was having to be the breadwinner while he's beginning and starting his career. We had never
mhm,
lived together. We had never even lived in the same city. So we had dated long
mhm.
distance before we got
Wow.
married. Even when we first started
Mhm,
dating, we still lived about 45 minutes away, but then it was 3 hours. So we got married. it just obvious that it wasn't going to work.
Mhm.
He was very honest with me and said, "Hey, this isn't working." But I was just like, "No, we're gonna pray and fast, and I'm gonna anoint oil, and those things work." And I'm not
Yeah.
disputing that, but there also comes a point where the Bible says if the unbelieving departs, you let them depart. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying that that's exclusively to a person saying that they believe in God or not, but if a person is telling you, I don't want to be in this marriage or this relationship, you have
Mhm.
God doesn't want you to just sit there and
Yeah.
be whatever. So I had to really deal with that. I was in the program. It was a 4-year PhD program. So like my marriage is falling apart like a month or two
Mm.
months into the program. So I'm
Mm.
like, okay, what do I do? My parents are like, no matter what you do, you don't quit this program. And
Mm.
so I do commend my ex-husband for being, financially holding me down through that. So I went on and finished it. We were separated for portions of the PhD program. I wrote the dissertation while like we were in the worst of it. Like
Mm.
it was bad. And I'm telling you, it was like a supernatural, just like I would just be in the bed crying out to God, saying, God, I believe in marriage. I'm trying to be a good wife. I'm trying to do all the things that I believe that I'm supposed to do. Help
Mhm.
me. And
Yeah.
God would just give me the words for my dissertation. And I would
Mm.
just get up and just start typing. Like, I have no
Mhm.
idea how I wrote a dissertation in 3 to 4 months. And this
Yeah.
dissertation was nominated for Best Dissertation Award. Like, I
Wow.
haven't written that well since. Like, I don't know how that happened. But that
Purely.
just to God and his grace.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah.
Fast
I
forward.
was gonna say, yeah, to
Yeah.
have all that going on in your personal life in the thick of trying to do a dissertation and finish a PhD program, it had to be God to get you
And
through
we
that.
moved. And we moved. We moved from
Oh.
Florida to Rhode Island.
Oh.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was cold. It was when
Oh
I had lived
man.
there, I remember they said it was like on the radio. They hadn't seen the sun in like 200 and some days. And
Oh.
so, yeah. So I just
Yeah.
remember being in the apartment, typing and just crying out to God and just praying and just crying and praying and just typing and crying. I mean, it was just
Mhm.
this weird just experience. And
Mhm.
fast forward, I graduated. My ex-husband came to the graduate, well, he wasn't my ex-husband then. My then husband came to the graduation, and it was just an awkward, just tense thing. And
Mhm.
then like a month after that, I moved to Ohio because I got in a
Mhm.
postdoctoral fellowship, and then the marriage ended.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you feel about the marriage finally ending? I know you worked really hard to keep it
Yeah.
together, and I know that felt like failure to you in
Oh
some
my
ways.
God. Yes.
So yeah, how did let's talk first about
Yeah.
what that was like for you when it failed, and then talk about how you came out of that rut that you were in.
Oh, absolutely. So it felt like a death. People say
Mhm.
that divorce is like a death, except without like
Mhm.
I don't want to say the benefits. Like most people, if you lose a spouse, they're sympathetic to you. They'll come
Mhm.
and start meal trains, and
Yeah.
they'll all
Yeah.
the things like that. But when you lose a spouse through a divorce, you kind of lose friends, and people kind of pick sides and things
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
And then there's also the public shame, particularly in the kind of the church that I grew up. Fortunately, my father and mother were very understanding. I never felt any judgment or anything from them. But
Mhm.
there were some church, people where you kind of felt like you were now this heathen, this,
Mhm.
how dare you, because people don't know when you don't tell everyone
Mhm.
or announce all of those things. I'm a pretty transparent person, but I was healing. So you feel like
Yeah.
it's a death. But then
Yeah.
when it finally was over and I got the letter, because I didn't go to the divorce proceedings or anything like that. But when I got the
Mhm.
letter, with the final decree and things like that, it was this immense sense of um I want to say relief. I felt so
Mm.
like free, not free like, oh my God, I can't wait to go date, but it was like
Right.
I was free from trying to fix something that I couldn't fix.
Yeah.
And I felt like God had given me an out, if that made sense. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't the one who
Mhm.
filed for the divorce. He filed for it. He did all the procedures. I just signed a piece of paper. That was it.
Mhm.
And I thank God for that.
Yeah.
We didn't have children together. We had already gotten rid of the property. So like it wasn't like this long, nasty,
Yeah.
things like that. So that's how I felt. Now, how I got through it, I did counseling. I did both Christian and secular counseling. Shout
Mm.
out to Divorce Care. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but
Yeah.
it's a program
Mhm.
that a lot of churches do. I
Yes.
looked up a church. It was an all white church because where I lived in Ohio was all white. I was probably the youngest person there. I got a divorce like a couple months after my 30th birthday. So, for women, like we have this arbitrary idea that 30 is the age of like, oh my God, if I don't have married or have kids by 30, my life's over. So it was
Yeah.
just like, so I was dealing with those emotions. So I went to the divorce care thing for a few months. I did,
Mhm.
personal counseling to kind of deal with the issues of that. And
Mhm.
admittedly, it's been 7 years now. There's
Mhm.
still some residual damage, right?
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
I'm healing, but there's still, that little bit of something. But
Yeah.
I am able to reflect on that time and just I- I'm just so amazed at how God proved himself in my life during that season.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great testimony. And yes, for those out there watching, we do have divorce care at Oakwood Church, and maybe there's other churches in our local community. But I know it's definitely a ministry that is needed and that people have benefited from. So yeah, good that that was available to you.
Yeah.
Um, so we met at a Sister Circle retreat in
Yes.
October of 2019.
Yes,
Yeah,
2 years ago.
yeah, yeah. So tell me where you were in your life at that point. What made
Yes.
you sign up to attend the Sister Circle retreat? What was it that you were looking for when you decided to come? And where were you in your own life at that point?
Oh my goodness. So if my timeline is correct, which I think it is, because I had just had my daughter in February of 2019,
Mhm.
and both of my deliveries, I almost died. I had
Mm,
severe preeclampsia. It was just horrible. I ended up having to stay in the hospital for about a week after each delivery with them trying
mm,
to get my blood pressure down. And I remember when I was laying in the bed and just crying and just so frustrated, like, why can't I have the traditional birthing experience where I give birth and go home the next day? And just, why is it so hard for me? And I just remember just crying and weeping. And both of my parents were there. And my dad was like, Amanda, God is putting you through this for a reason. And then I remember I was listening to Charles Stanley, like, who was just my absolute, just top favorite minute pastor ever, and he
mm,
had a series of sermons, and they were saying something to the effect of don't waste your suffering. And I
mm,
was sitting there and I was like, okay, God, there has to be a lesson in this. Like
mhm,
why did you choose me to have this? And I remember I had seen the advertisement for the conference. I was living in San Antonio, Texas. The conference
mhm,
was in Tyler. So it's about 4 or 5 hour drive. And so I just
mhm,
remember being in the hospital and I'm like, okay, God, you don't want me to waste my suffering. You know, the things that I'm going through, millions of other women are going through this at the exact moment or have gone through it or are going to go through it. How can I, use my suffering to uplift and help other people? And I
mhm.
saw the flyer for it. Girl, I put it on my credit card because it's kind of expensive
Right.
at that moment.
Yeah,
And I just said, I'm gonna do it. I didn't know
yeah.
who I was gonna go with. I
Mhm,
didn't really present it to my mother or sister. I didn't want to ask anybody because
mhm.
with Black people, I love our people, but when you plan a trip with folks, girl, it can go left real quick, and I didn't want
Yes.
any of that. So I just went on and made the reservations, and I'm like, I'm
Mhm,
gonna go by myself. I'm just gonna
Mhm.
trust God and just do it. And girl, I was terrified, but I did it. And yeah,
Yeah.
so here we are.
And here we are. I mean, we have talked about this before. Each of us in our sister circle had different reasons for coming to that retreat. We were at different points in our lives, but all of us, in one way or another, were at a point in our lives where we needed to make a change, and I feel
Yeah,
like that's what led us to come. And we all, yeah, all of us came to the retreat alone, without
yeah,
others with us. And so
yes,
it just feels like destiny, like that brought us all together at that retreat because of the things that we had in common. And I think that is where this whole idea of you're not alone kind of began,
yes,
because it truly was that weekend. I feel like solidified the importance of having people around you who can lift you up, who can hold you up, who are maybe in a similar place, or at least can identify. And I definitely feel like we in our circle kind of found each other, and really connected even more so after the retreat, after we started the group chat or whatever. But
absolutely.
it was that support system that we found, that was so healing and helpful for each of us, I know, going
Yeah.
forward, and we've been able to maintain that, which has been such a blessing.
And I tell people this all the time. I tell people you can't be a part of mine, but I
Yeah,
wish that
right.
everyone we are not accepting new members at this present
No,
moment. But
right.
I just like you're saying, I believe it was divinely orchestrated because it
Mhm.
I'm not that like I love people, but I'm not really the type of person that's just gonna go somewhere like that by my. I'll go get a
Yeah,
cup of coffee, but to go out of
right.
town, stay in
Yeah,
rooms with people I don't know. I mean, this was pre-pandemic, people, so we
yeah,
probably wouldn't do it quite the same now. But
right.
yeah, and just do it. And like you're saying, it absolutely was one of the best decisions that I've made because of the support that I've gotten from Kim and others in our sister circle. I mean,
Mhm.
it has definitely made a difference in my life.
Yeah, same. I agree 100%. So I want to shift to what your life kind of did after that, because a lot of stuff happened after October 2019.
Oh yes,
Part of it
honey.
part of it was, COVID, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
but aside from that, even before the whole COVID situation, you were in a position after you left, after the Sister Circle retreat, in those few months afterwards, where you were making the you were getting ready for the move back across country, but you were also in a faculty position,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I know that the decision to move was a was a hard
It's
one because of
it was.
where you were in your own career. And so talk
It,
about that.
Girl, I have quit more jobs for marriage and love than probably anyone else besides Vivian Montgomery, who is my mother. But yeah, so kind of giving the backstory. So after my divorce with my first husband, I ended up getting my
Mhm.
dream job where I was tenure track teaching at Miami University at Oxford, Ohio. It was just absolutely the best job ever. Well, I ended up getting married, having a baby. My son was born in
Mhm.
October of 2017. 2 months later, like I had just barely gotten off. I still was on maternity leave, y'all. I have to tell y'all the testimony about my maternity leaves for both of my children in the United States of America. You would not believe. I was off with my son paid for 10 months and with my daughter for 6 months. So don't tell me what
Wow.
God can do. Yes, yes,
Seriously.
yes, yes, yes. Okay. So anyway, so my husband was active duty Air Force, and he had been at his duty station in Dayton, Ohio, Wright Pat, for at that point for about 10 or 11 years. So we just
Mhm.
assumed that he was going to be there for the rest of his career. And so
Mhm.
like a month or two into my leave, he comes up to me and says, "Hey, I got orders to Texas. Should I take them or should I retire?" Because at that point he had already had 20 years in, so he was
Mhm.
eligible for retirement. And so we really prayed about it and talked about it. And I was kind of torn because one, I knew that if we were to relocate, clearly I would have to leave my job, my dream job, the one
Mhm.
that I had, prepared my life for.
Mhm.
to that point. But then I also couldn't kick this desire to be, near my parents because they lived in Houston. I had not lived in the same time zone as my parents since I graduated high school. So like I could
Mm,
not give up on that. So I ended up quitting my job and moving to
mm,
San Antonio. So then I accepted a lecturer position. If any of you guys are familiar with the academy and academia, like tenure tracks are highly coveted. Like people don't leave
yeah,
those, right? And to
right.
leave that to go to a lecturer position, while I was
Yeah,
grateful, it was a temporary experience, if
yeah.
what I was saying. So anyway, we moved there in May of 2018. I found out I was pregnant with my daughter like a month and a half later. So I had to start my new job and say, hey, I know you just hired me, but oh yeah, I'm having a baby and she's due in February. And so I had no maternity leave. This lets you know the God's grace. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So my department chair set up my and designed my. I've been very blessed to always have favor with my employers. So they ended up setting up my classes. So I was able to be home with my daughter for 6 months, fully paid.
Mm,
And so we did that. And then my husband at that point was like, babe, I am over the Air Force. I want to go back to Ohio. And I'm like, dude, we just picked up and moved cross country. And so he was like, I'm putting in my notice and blah blah blah. So he had put in so they have to apply for retirement in the Air Force. So he had applied for like in December so that he would be able to go by June. Well, during that time we were kind of hearing about something called a
mm.
coronavirus, COVID kind of over. We were planning to go to Disney World. I don't know if you remember that. And so
Yes, I
it
do.
was in the front of my mind. I mean, it wasn't in the front. It was in my mind, but it wasn't really, really big on my mind. So then March
Yeah.
happened. The world shuts down. Disney trip is
Mm,
canceled. My husband is like,
yeah.
oh no, we're still going back to Ohio. He was like, you need to put in your notice for your job and we're going to move. I'm like, where are we moving? I don't know. So we left. We lived with friends. We had no jobs, just nothing.
Mm,
So we stayed with friends for about a month and a half. My current job, which I actually am still employed with, in Texas, they're like, hey, there's a global pandemic. Why don't you just stay on and teach online with us? So I'm like,
mhm,
okay. And so I'm still teaching with them. And then my
mhm.
husband still didn't have a job. Then a couple of things came through with, retirement and with my income. We were able to find a house, which is the house that
Mm.
I'm in now, which is an absolutely
Beautiful house.
beautiful love dream. I would use the word dream home, if it was in,
Yeah.
Florida, the water. Uh, but absolutely beautiful home. And so we were there. And
Yeah.
so life was going okay. And then my job was like, hey, we're opening back up in Texas because coronavirus doesn't exist in Texas. And so we're going to maybe end our contract with you, but we're going to give you
Mm,
through December, like in next month. And I'm
mm.
like, oh, okay, well, I can't be mad about that. You guys have kept me on for over a year. So I'm like, what do I need to do? And my husband says, well, you've been talking about real estate or you kind of thought about it. Why don't you do that? And I'm like, real estate? I don't know how to do that. And so in May, started taking classes, recently passed the exam and license. And now I'm just stepping out on faith and just trusting God in this next season.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So it's interesting for any academics out there listening, it seems kind of like it doesn't really go together, right? Like you
Yeah.
jump from
Hmm.
academia to real estate, um, but it just goes to show that, there's not only one path. And what I love about you is that even each time that your life has had to take a change, make a change, you've had to make an adjustment, make a change. You've been able to just roll with it. I know not always, not without a fight
Gracefully.
sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to paint a rosy picture here. The reality is it's hard.
Yeah.
But I do admire that you've been able to make the adjustment when necessary, and just do whatever you had to do, and find a way to make things work. And I think that's a lesson right there, right? Like, life isn't always going to go as we imagine it, and it's not going to fall together in perfect pieces. But the key is really to make those necessary adjustments, to be willing to, to be flexible, and be willing to have an open mind about what's possible, and how the experiences that we have can actually benefit us, maybe in ways we didn't expect, but it can still work. And so I love the way you have tied together your academic experience and education with this new venture in real estate, which, some might say, oh, she failed to be successful in academia, but no, in actuality, you shifted, and you're using what you have learned in academia to benefit
Yes.
you in a different realm.
Absolutely. And so, like, you've been there for some of my intimate, like, crying, trying to figure it out, looking crazy on when I'm talking to you. But one of the things that helps me is I look at the facts of my life. Every
Mhm.
time I've had to take a detour or things have not worked out the way that I thought they have should have been, God
Mhm.
has remained consistent and he has blessed me. And
Mhm.
so I have to know that whatever life throws my way, there are two things that are going to remain consistent. God
Mhm.
has never failed me, and
Mhm.
I'm going to be okay, right? Like, those are the things that I
Yeah.
have to constantly remind myself, like, oh my goodness, I have no clients. How am I going to sell houses? I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. I
Mhm.
have to look and say, I remember when it was like 2 weeks before college was supposed to start, and I had not figured out what college I was going to go to. I didn't have a scholarship. I was like, God, what am I going to do? I literally,
Mhm.
my dad and I got in a car and drove to Bethune-Cookman like 2 weeks before school started and submitted my
Mhm.
application, and I got full funding. I remember, like,
Wow.
oh God, what am I going to do? Where am I going to live for grad school? How am I going to pay for it? I remember emailing all of the professors in the department and saying, listen, I'm starting this program. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And I ended up getting a professor who had been on a sabbatical. And she was like, I was looking for a graduate assistant. Here's full funding. And oh, yeah,
Wow.
your salary double what we're paying the rest of the graduate assistants. I
Wow.
remember when it was time for me to do my PhD program, and I had just recently got married, in a horrible marriage.
Mhm.
And I remember, like, originally, so I was living in West Palm Beach, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with South Florida, but the school that I was going to, all of the classes up until that year had been in Fort Lauderdale. Literally, the like semester that I started, they
Mhm.
voted to move all of the classes to Boca. So instead of driving an hour and a half for classes, I would have now only have to be driving 45 minutes. I remember
Wow.
not having funding for the PhD program. And I remember just emailing the professors in the department and ended up working in the dean's office. So it seems
Wow.
like every single time that my back is
Mhm.
against the wall and I'm like, God, I don't know,
Mhm.
what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? God comes through. So I'm
Yeah.
like, if he has come through in
Yep.
2002, 2006, 2008,
Yeah.
2014, why wouldn't he come
Mhm.
through in 2021? So
That's
that's the
right.
thing that keeps me going, right? So that's
Yeah.
how I figure, and I think about my life. There's a book by this one author. Can I think of her name? She was at the Sister Circle, but she wrote the book Nothing Wasted, and it's basically
Oh,
based
yes.
off Romans 8:28 about all things working together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose, right?
Yeah.
So I think
Yep.
about my life. I think about my education. I think about my passion, which is for helping underserved communities, for helping Black people, for helping minorities, for trying
Yeah.
to lessen the wealth gap. I think about all
Yeah.
of my training, and I just said,
Yeah.
you know what? These are the gifts and talents, and God has prepared me for this moment, for this season, and
Yeah.
everything that I need, I have. So I just have to
Yeah.
do it, and that's what keeps me going.
I love it. I love it. I mean, we can stop the show right there. You just said it all.
Then we gotta do the altar call. Remember, that's what I said last time. We always have to
Yes.
do an altar call.
Yes. So, So for those of you who have been discouraged and
Right.
distressed, just know that
Exactly.
God is with you. Come on
Yes,
down and give your
exactly.
life to Him.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, what I
Yes.
want to do right now actually is go to your promo video for your real
Mm.
estate because it's fabulous. Let's go ahead and run that. Let's go ahead and run that. Very
Yes.
nice. I love it. It's so classy. And
Well, thank you.
realtor, motivator,
You're
that is
great.
exactly what you are. And I feel like, the story that you've just shared should motivate all of us to stay in the fight. That's really what it comes down to. It's not giving up. It's remembering how he's brought us through in the past and keep fighting, keep pushing, keep doing the next right thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so real estate is the new thing.
It is a new
Real
thing.
estate was the next right thing. And so talk a little bit about what you're doing now and how people can find you. And of course, we need everyone to like, follow, and share Amanda Gatewood.
Yes.
So so tell us about how we can do that.
Yes. So like I said, I am recently licensed in Columbus, Ohio. So in the whole state of Ohio, you can visit my website, amandagatewood.com. You can follow me on Instagram. It is dr.amanda_Gatewood. And so I'm just excited about real estate because there has never been a time in history where the majority of African Americans have owned their home. We have
Mm,
just not been doing that. And research, and we all know that the number one way in which people acquire wealth in America is still through home ownership. And so, if we
mhm,
are not getting into the game, if we're not in here building equity, if we're not here, being able to have wealth to pass down to our generation, to our, children and their children's children, they're going to
mhm,
be left behind. And so, I just am excited about this opportunity to walk alongside families and individuals as they begin this home buying process. It's my goal to educate people and let them know that home ownership is within reach and that it is
mhm,
something that one should aspire to. Even if it's
mhm,
not your primary residence, even if you're saying, you know what, I don't really want to maintain a home, but you want to, buy some land, you want to buy a house and make it an Airbnb, you want to rent it out,
mhm.
whatever, just get you some real estate and
Yeah.
hold on to it because research shows that the average home prices or values double every 10 to 20 years. So you buy a
Mm,
house today for $200,000, in 10 to 20 years it could be worth about $400,000. So you have at
mhm,
least $200,000 in equity, in addition to whatever you paid down on the principal. You're able to use
mhm.
that money to buy more real estate, hopefully, or to
Yeah.
pay college education, to pay off medical debt, or just anything like that. So I'm
Right.
just excited about this. I see this as a form of ministry. And
Mm,
if I'm able to help 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 families in this season of my
mhm,
life, I feel like
mhm.
that has potential reach because that's 50 families that, are going to be able to acquire more wealth.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important for our community, especially. And I think the education piece is really valuable. Like, you're not just out there selling houses, you're helping them to understand how to build wealth. And that's a different thing entirely. And that's definitely something that's needed because a lot of our people, speaking of the Black community, just don't know. They don't even see that as within their reach or possible. And so the fact that you have the education background, you
Mhm.
also bring to this real estate job or business the ability to educate your clients and to help them know what's possible, to understand what's possible for them. So I think that's fantastic. And I hope that people hear you, that the people follow and share your social media page and really spread the word about what you're trying to do. because it's definitely something that's needed.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so follow her Instagram page. She's trying to get her followers up, and she needs you
Yes.
guys to support.
Thank you.
Go ahead and like her page, if nothing else, her Instagram. And she has some really great videos, as you see, promos and things like that. And I'm sure we all know someone, if not us, someone probably could use some advice and help, especially if you're obviously, if you're in the Ohio area. But good stuff. And even if you're not in the Ohio area, I think the information
Good
that you're
reach out.
sharing is
Yeah.
still valuable. Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. This was
I,
fun. I love talking to you. I do.
uh, I love talking to you too, and I love you, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
Kiss and hug those babies for me. I,
Girl. Woo. I'm saying, come babysit.
I would love to. I would love to get up there and just squeeze and hug them. We're gonna make it happen one of these days, real soon. Well, we're going to say goodbye to Amanda now, and I just want to thank all of you for being here. Our scripture for today actually comes from 1 Timothy 6:11 and 12, and it is chase after true holiness, justice, faithfulness, love, hope, and tender humility. Fight with faith for the winner's prize. And I think that if nothing else, today's show is an example of how important it is to fight the good fight of faith and to trust that whatever God is allowing you to go through, he will empower you to get through. And even if things don't necessarily work out exactly how we hoped or how we imagined, everything does indeed work together for good if you just believe and trust and stay in the fight. That is the message for today. And I hope that you hear it and apply it to your own life. We will be back again next week. I will be back again next week to talk a little more about how we can get up when failure knocks us down. In the meantime, have an incredible week. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.